respect him, I admire him, trust him. And he's a man of many talents and tales. Some of them I've heard. Most others I haven't. The ones that I have not heard, obviously, I can't tell you about. And the ones that I have, I'm not going to tell you about either. So there's a lot I'm leaving out of this. Most of you already know him well. And if you don't know him, then ask him questions and please make them hard and you know, really on the edge. And he could tell his own tale. Bill?
That's all?
That's all? That's all you do?
Yeah, Bill.
Nice job.
All right. First of all, I hope none of you are coming to hear a writer read his writing, because I ain't no writer. I just, through the years, I've told certain stories and people said, oh, that's interesting, you ought to write it down. So I write just to tell a story. And some of the incidents and some of the events are pretty interesting, because when you live as long as I do, you're bound to have a couple of exciting things happen in that length of time. But what you need to know, I'm a little intimidated tonight, because I usually don't hang out with crowds. I try to avoid them, because first of all, I'm deaf. That's one thing. The other thing is that, you know, if it's not Alzheimer's, it's dementia or whatever you want to call it, but the memory's gone. Memory's gone. I can't remember words. I mean, I go to say a word and I have to wait 10 minutes for it to process. And then sometimes I even say the wrong word. And anyway, that's what you're dealing with, and I'm intimidated, because you're intelligent people. But I want you to know that it means a lot to me, and I'm really honored that you intelligent people have been willing to come and listen to me masturbate.
Wait a minute. Is that what we're doing? Here we go.
I told you I get mixed up with those words sometimes. Anyway, we'll stop between pieces. I'm trying, you know, I'm sensitive and I'm not going to keep you too long, but we'll stop between in case you have questions and stuff like that.
Hard questions.
No comments when I'm talking. Okay, the first piece that I want to read is a chapter from a book that I'm writing, and I'm collaborating with Teresa Anthony. She and I are collaborating on this book. It's about an African-American man who grows up in Charleston, goes to Alaska via New York, and it's what it's come out to be. It didn't start out that way, but what it's turned out to be is a combination of her experiences and my experiences. And so none of it, you know, it's, yeah.
It's good.
What?
It's good.
It's good.
But anyway, the novel is called Leroy, and this is chapter 3. And chapter 3 is called Thaddeus. 1945 was a banner year for Leroy. It was the year that World War II ended, and although he hadn't been very affected by it, he had noticed that there were a lot of sailor uniforms in town. Listen, I'm telling you the damn story. I'm supposed to be reading it. Okay, all right. Okay. All right, sorry. He was aware there were a lot of sailor uniforms in Charleston on the streets, and he was also realized that it was hard to come by a 5-cent Hershey bar. That was how the war affected him. But the most significant event for him in 1945, the year the war ended, was meeting a boy 3 years older than he was. And that boy was destined to become his best friend and mentor. The initial encounter happened when his mama Rosalie took him with her on what she termed a business trip. It was to an establishment on Cumming Street where she would deal with a man who was called Moon by everyone, including his son Thaddeus, and was renowned for producing a superlative quality of illegal whiskey. That was Moon, of the moonshine. Now, most of the time, Rosalie didn't drink at all, not even a beer. But when she did, and no one knew why, no one trigger had ever been identified. But when she did, it usually escalated into a 2 to 4 day main event, beginning with the visit to Cumming Street. On this particular trip, for the first time and with no explanation, she took Leroy, who loved to go anywhere with his mama because the excursions were always worthy of being cataloged in his memoirs of adventures with mama, which were always endowed with that quality of impending pandemonium so characteristic of Rosalie's stance in the world, whether it was her talking to a white man trying to flex his racial superiority or to a clerk in a store trying to exploit her color or lack of education. But they were escapades so filled with bizarre brouhaha, they were incapable of embellishment, even given Leroy's active imagination. As soon as they arrived at 179 Cumming Street, Leroy got a queasy feeling that he might be in alien territory. It was his first exposure to the downtown Charleston style of side porch and door which were separated from the street by the high wooden fence with its solid gate that opened onto the courtyard. Standing on tiptoe, he tried to see over the tall fence, but the most he could see was the top of a seriously aged house, the eaves of which framed a solitary dormer that had him fixed in its vision like a one-eyed gargoyle. A few years later, when looking at a picture of a cyclops, he would make the connection. Without knocking, Rosalie opened the gate and with her characteristic boldness and with no hesitation walked in. Leroy, wondering why she had not knocked, followed close behind her, feeling a little tense, but in spite of the rising tension, he trusted his mama so emphatically that he did his best impression of a 10-year-old's insouciance. Then, as Rosalie marched up the 3 decadent stairs, Leroy had a clear view of a porch that was absolutely devoid of any discernible maintenance in recent years. The diseased facade of the house had broken out in multitudinous scales of bleached and peeling paint, which formed ideal launching pads for myriad cobwebs. But he felt a modicum of assurance because he saw 2 daddy longlegs in the same web. And he remembered that his mama said, if you saw a daddy longlegs and it was alive, you were going to have good luck. But of course, if you saw one or you killed one, that was certain bad luck. The boards of the naked deck were so warped that the straining tongue and groove joints had cupped to a point where they were visibly bursting apart. Leroy flirted with a fantasy that maybe in the crawl space beneath the porch, a gargantuan mammoth had been trapped, and that its battering struggle to escape had caused the disintegration of the deck. As Rosalie reached for the handle of the door, his veneer of calmness began to wane, but not enough to afflict his imagination, because when he focused on the 2 ancient rocking chairs astride the door with their cracked and striated leather seats, in his mind they instantly transmogrified into a National Geographic image of lions guarding a mysterious portal of an ancient Egyptian mausoleum, signifying to him what could only be the entrance to some Gothic chamber of horrors. He had to concentrate to identify that the funny feeling in his legs was due to the frenetic jiggling of his kneecaps. Leroy was snatched from his fantasy back to reality, because just as Rosalie touched the knob, the door was flung open, so that what they saw framed in the doorway was a very tall, gaunt man in a pair of white overalls, splattered with a legion of multicolored stains. Under the overalls was what looked like a black tuxedo shirt, over which he was wearing an ancient suede vest, incongruously formal and of immaculate quality. The house next door was behind them and cast a shadow on the full length of the man's gangly body and halfway up an elongated neck. leaving an eerie pinpoint spotlight of sunshine on the top half of his neck, as well as on a face so dark that it glistened in the sun with a luminous blue-purple hue. His head was canted slightly downward and to the side, the angle perfectly matching the apologetic tone he used to greet them. "Oh, my Lord God, look at you. If it ain't Miss Rosalie, it sure the Lord God is, and you ain't telling me this that baby of you. Oh, been too long. I swear to the Lord Jesus, it done been too long." But his small talk was axed by Rosalie's question. "So you got some good, Moon? And I mean some ain't gonna make my eyeball frolic out and lay down on my cheek, you understand what I'm saying?" Totally confused, Leroy is thinking that the more Moon smiled, the more the expression on his face appeared to symptomize some inward pain. "But Miss Rosalie," practically mewing, "the last thing I'd do on this God's earth be give you a bad badge. Now come on in here." Continuing his abject patter, he led them into a space that was in contrast to Leroy's dismal expectations gleaned from the exterior scenario. His mouth agape, the awed boy looked around the spacious room. The first thing he saw was a highly polished wooden table on which was a large vase of daylilies. At the bottom end of each table leg was a carved lion foot, which took the form of cub paws on the several cane-bottomed chairs. Against one wall, under a large antique oil painting of a bucolic scene, was an antique credenza with numerous glasses of crystal quality, encircling 3 decanters of clear liquid. The boy felt skewed into another world. The man made a palm-up, open-arm gesture to welcome them, and to Leroy he said, "I tell you something, boy, your mama be my best customer, and that ain't no—" And then, with no discernible linguistic break or even hesitation, but having glanced at Rosalie's foreboding look, he performed a well-oiled rhetorical reverse, warning himself sotto voce, "Let the cat out of the bag, that's the licking hole, that's for sure." And then, without missing a beat, his voice restored to its former beseeching tone as he poured a small amount of clear liquid into one of the glasses. "But what I'm trying to say is this here is something special for a special lady, a lady I done known ever since we was in Burke High School together. For God, your mom always be my best favorite lady, and I ain't fooling on that. No sirree. You understand what I'm saying?" There was something pacifying about Moon's patter, and Leroy, intrigued by the man and his spiel, began to feel a little more comfortable. That is, until he watched his mama, Rosalie, drain the glass in a single gluttonous gulp, and then begin to shake her head violently while simultaneously she warbled in unison with the furious motion of her jiggling lips. His focus was on her as she blew out her breath with the audible desperation of a breaching whale, and with a mercurial upswing in his anxiety, he listened with equal intensity as she asked, "What that cost, Moon? And just remember, you ain't dealing with no Mrs. Ann Astabel." Moon responded, "Why, Miss Rosalie, you know your friend Moon gonna give you the best deal in town." To which she immediately countered, "I ain't no chicken, you know, so keep your monkey shine for somebody else you know better." While she and Moon were negotiating quality and price, and Rosalie always had to negotiate, even if it meant paying more than she would without negotiating. So while they were in the midst of their ritualized confabulation, Moon's son, Thaddeus, whose indigo-tinted face was even darker than his father's, swaggered into the room with the self-importance of being the son of the best moonshiner in town, and with the effectual knowledge that his home was the well-known Cumming Street establishment frequented by a more diverse clientele, including representatives from the top tier of the old city's aristocracy, as well as visiting officials from the state government in Columbia, than any other institution in Charleston, including the famed Fort Sumter Hotel. To Leroy, the expression on the boy's face bore a freaky resemblance to the look his mama got when she had been crossed. Only now, he was looking at a dark visage accentuated by a pair of thick black eyebrows, straining toward an inquisitive convergence. The gaze so intense that Leroy could not help but feel he was being interrogated. a feeling confirmed by the boy's gruff tone when he asked, "What's your name, boy?" Now,